Hey, what's up guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Tech, and today we are going to discussing the Google Tensor chipset. I'm going to give you its complete spec sheet and its Antutu benchmark and 3D wildlife and CPU and GPU performance. So without further ado, let's get started. So the Google Tensor is an 8-core chipset that was announced on October 19, 2021, and it is manufactured using 5nm process technology. And it has 2 cores at Cortex X1 at 2.8 GHz and 2 cores as Cortex A76 on 2.2 GHz, and for efficiency cores at A55 on 1.8 GHz. Its CPU performance shows 76% of result, and gaming performance shows 84% of result, and battery life is also shows 92% of results. Now let's talk about the Antutu benchmarks. As you guys can see, the Google Tensor scores 683,017. That is clearly ahead from the MediaTek Dimensity 1200, the Snapdragon 870. So that's mean this processor can compete with the Snapdragon 870, Snapdragon 865, Exynos 2100, and Dimensity 1200 because it's a very much capable processor. If you guys can see on the screen right now, the Antutu benchmark shows CPU performance 1,67,563. The GPU performance shows 2,78,665. And the rest is memory and UX, as you guys can see on the screen right now. Now let's talk about the Geekbench 5. The single core performance shows 1,052 scores, and the multi-core performance shows 2,851. That's awesome score for the Google Tensor chipset because that is their own chipset, so that means better efficiency and better instruction set architecture is going to be used in this processor. Now let's talk about the 3D wildlife performance. As you guys can see, the stability shows 54% of performance, and the graphics test shows 37 FPS, and the total score got 6,186. It's also an awesome score for the Google Tensor chipset because they are using the Exynos 9855. That is the old version of chipset, but they have renewed this processor to be a capable processor for their Google 6 Pro and Google Pixel 6. As you guys can see on the screen right now, they are using in their both devices the Google Pixel 6 Pro and the Google Pixel 6. But the Google Pixel 6 Pro is clearly ahead in Antutu 9 benchmark because of more RAM. They are using the Google Pixel 6 Pro. Now let's talk about the CPU performance. As I mentioned before, the 2 cores at 2.8 GHz on Cortex X1. The 2 cores on 2.25 GHz as Cortex A76. The 4 efficiency cores at 1.8 GHz on the Cortex A55. They are using an 8 cores, as you guys can see on the screen right now. The frequency is also 28 MHz, that means 2.8 GHz. The instruction set architecture is a little bit older, but this processor can compete on the newer version of instruction set architecture. The L2 cache shows that 3 MB and L3 caches has 4 MB of cache memory. The processor is also fabricated on 5nm, and the TTP shows 10 watts. That's some crazy details about this chipset. Now let's talk about the graphics. They are using the Mali G78 MB1220 graphics, and architecture is Valhalla. The same graphics they are using in MediaTek Dimensity 9000. I will make a completely new details video of the MediaTek Dimensity 9000 versus the Google Tensor. So make sure you subscribe to my channel to never miss an update, and also watch my other videos. The GPU frequency also shows 848 MHz, and the execution units are 20. The sharing units is also 320. The flops shows 2,171 gigaflops. They are using the DirectX 12. But I'm very glad they are using the LPDDR5 RAM because the A14 Bionic was using the LPDDR4X RAM. But let's see. The LPDDR5 RAM, the memory frequency on 3.2 GHz, that is 3200 MHz, and also the max memory bandwidth of 51 GB per second. Wow, that's awesome. The max memory size is also 12 GB, so that means your Google Pixel 6 Pro, let's see, can support 12 GB. Now let's talk about the multimedia. They are using their own NPU, that is Tensor Processing Unit, and they are using the 3.1 UFS 3.1 storage time. but the max display resolution is 4K. That means this processor can support 4K display resolution, and also the video capture is kept on 8K up to 30 FPS. I'm glad to see that, because the A14 and A15 Bionic can also support the 4K up to 60 FPS, but this processor can support 8K up to 30 FPS and also can video playback at 8K up to 30 FPS and 4K up to 120 FPS. I'm very glad to see that, and also happy to see that. The 4G support shows LTE Cat 24. That means you have the download speed of 1200 MB per second and the upload speed of 200 MB per second. There is also 5G support, and they are using Wi-Fi 6 with the Bluetooth version of 5.2. That means you have the better coverage and the better speed. And this processor was also announced on October 2021, and this processor is also a flagship level processor. So if you like this video and if you enjoy this video, then sub to the channel will be Google, and also leave a like and comment down below. Let me know your thoughts about this processor. Thank you for watching. It's Take, and see you in the next video. With